So I think it's okay. I don't want to take too much time. I can go ahead, get started. So leave you more time in the Q&A for parents, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for attending today's seminar by Professor Ann on college application planning. Today's seminar is for both the seniors from high school who is ready to start the application, college admission application. It is also very important for high school student. That's going to be helpful. The information you hear today is going to be very helpful in planning your high school academic course selection as well as what you do, okay? So I really appreciate time from Professor Ann. I'm going to introduce the agenda for tonight. Apologize, my screen just froze. 1 second. Okay. Here's agenda for tonight's seminar. We're going to have a brief introduction of Blue Ivy organization. Then I'm going to have a brief introduction of Blue Ivy summer classes, which is going to start early June and ends in August. Then I'm going to give an introduction of Professor Ann, although a lot of you already are familiar with him or have been his student or attended his previous seminars. Then I'm going to, Professor Ann is going to bring us a seminar on the topics of college application planning. Then we're going to save as much time as possible at the end for Q&A for parents, okay? I'm going to start on the first one, which is the Blue Ivy introduction. A lot of the parents are very familiar with Blue Ivy. There's basic 3 parts of Blue Ivy organization. The first part is Blue Ivy Learning. That's actually the virtual academy. Well, Blue Ivy will bring the online virtual class, high quality classes to our student from elementary school all the way to high school. And in the next section, I'm going to introduce the summer classes we're going to bring to our student. So that's the virtual academy part. The second part of Blue Ivy organization is the nonprofit community service. Blue Ivy nonprofit organization is a volunteer services that we started about 3 years ago. And we give the high achieving high school student the opportunity to bring their leadership and also service to a lot of students in the Blue Ivy nonprofit community, the learning experience. So we have regular virtual weekly free classes tutoring the students in need. So all those are free classes that intend to bring the student in need classes that they cannot afford. At the same time, we provide really great opportunity for high achieving students to bring their service ability and also their academic ability to help the student in need. So all those are the free academic classes. A lot of time, we also organize a lot of best practice sharing, a lot of good student leaders seminars that will help the younger student to achieve the leadership experience and share their best practice in different specific topics. So if you are interested in joining that community, either as a volunteer or as a student, please reach out to us. The third part of Blue Ivy organization are Blue Ivy Educational Forum. So we offer regular free educational forum for mainly our parents' community. So the intention of this forum is trying to foster a community of parents and students in pursuing higher caliber personal development, including academic ability as well as leadership skills. And also it's, this business unit within Blue Ivy, it's also an intention of Blue Ivy organization, giving back to the parents of community. Like the seminar, free seminar we have tonight with Professor Ann, it's trying to educate both the parents and students on the college application planning as well as application strategy. All those are our free give back to our community best practice or good tips on helping the parents grow and also students to grow. Okay, so if you are interested in any of those, you can either reach out to me. I will share my contact information at the end of this presentation. So let me know if you want to get involved, interested in any part of them. Next, I really want to give everybody a good overview of our summer classes. I know within our WeChat group, we started to announce our summer classes. There are a lot of classes, a lot of parents, they probably are tired of watching or look at all those flyers. But I want to give everybody a quick summary, highlight our classes, so make it easier for you to understand what we have available here, and you can pick something really good for your kids. There are 5 category of classes we're offering in the summer. The first one is AP preparation class. All those class, we only select the core AP subject that typically student either needs to benefit from, prepare early, have a head start before the fall semester, or it's something that's more, it's more difficult. So it's good they have learned a foundational learning, then it will make it a lot easier for the fall. So those classes are focused on the core APs, which is AP World History. AP World History this summer is a very unique class. We have a really, really great teacher that's going to teach AP World History through the films. The students are going to watch some films. However, they will cover all the period of world history that will help the student tremendously. The teacher we have for that class are a Harvard as well as Yale graduate. Himself is a lawyer, very, very respectful. We got a lot of good feedback of this teacher. He's been teaching with us in the last 3 years. And give it a try. I think that class is not only lay a good foundation for the student, even if you are not taking the AP World History, it's going to give the kids very broad perspective, a good enrichment class for the high school student, even high-level middle school student, okay? The next are the AP Bio and AP Chemistry class. This class are taught by a really, really great AP Biochemistry teacher. Himself is an AP exam college board grader, as well as he participating in evaluating those AP exam questions. He's been teaching AP bio and chemistry boot camps for Blue Ivy in the past 3 years. A lot of good back of this teacher. He's such an excellent teacher. So I encourage, if your kids is taking the bio and chemistry in the fall, definitely give it a try. The third one is AP Computer Science class. It's also a very experienced teacher, high school teacher for many years, teaching this subject. The fifth one is AP Cal BC, and he's been teaching with us for the last 2 years. Also a great inspirational teacher. So any of your high school parents interested in taking those classes, you can sign up, okay? And give it a try. If you're not happy with the class, or if you don't feel like you don't need, we have a policy that you can withdraw after the first period. So we'll have no question asked refund. The second area of our summer class are Professor Ann's writing program. This year, we're going to have 2 writing programs. What I want to emphasize is most of the students know how busy Professor Ann is. It's really, really hard to engage him to teach an 8-week class. So this summer, we're fortunate to have Professor N to be able to teach 2 classes. One class is focused on college application asset writing, okay? This class is intended for seniors, but 11th grade are also welcome to get a head start on those writing skill development. The second class is called Perfect Your Writing. It's intended for 7th to 10th grade students. This class, we had offered it last year, tremendous feedback, okay? This class is intended to teach 7th to 10th grade students the key writing skills, including vocabulary, physiology, critical analysis, and a lot of structure development. There's a lot of really, really good knowledge, methodology in that class in a short 8-week period. I think this is a dramatic booster for students who needs the class, the writing skill to write their AP land assets, even their competition assets, as well as the regular, prepare them for in the future, the college application assets. So I would say those writing are more focused on practical writing, the writing that will help them to either speaking or communicating very compellingly. So I do strongly recommend those 2 writing class for students who really trying to improve their communication as well as writing skills, okay? The third category are the competition writing, okay? Competition writing classes are, I would say, the classic series of writing class Blue Ivy has been offered. So the writing competition classes we're offering are New York Times writing competition, as well as Scholastic writing competition. Scholastic, if you go to our registration link, you will see a lot of different categories. Scholastic writing competition has short stories and also poetry. There's a different style of writing. So we have specialized teacher, any kind of different writing style your kids are interested, are good at, you should find the corresponding writing class. What I want to emphasize is all of our competition writing classes, every single class, we have, a student that getting award, no matter it's honorary mentioning or silver or gold. Every single class, we have graduate student winning some level of award, okay? The teacher we have teaching those competition classes, the very experienced competition class teacher. The teacher that teaching those classes are Harvard graduate, literature and the journalist major graduate from Harvard. And also herself, Mr. Abbey is Iowa writer, a workshop professor. And she's been teaching this class for the last 3 years. Not only she has a lot of good results, she will personally work with students, editing and fine-tune their homework. Then at the end of the classes, the student will have the writing that they can submit for the competition, okay? So if you want the student engaged in a writing competition, I strongly recommend selecting one of those writing competition class. The third area is our SAT and or PSAT preparation class. We have a lot of success in the past SAT preparation class. We have switched different teachers, but in the past 2 years, we have been working with very experienced Harvard graduates that has been leading the class. And I'll give you an example. One of our last summer classes, among I think over 20 students, there's 8 students have SAT score above 1560. So really, really good result. And we do measure the student improvement. So if your students are aiming at taking SAT or just give it a try, I strongly recommend they start one of those classes, okay? The last 5th category are summer reading classes. So this is really intended for students that we'll have some extra time, but through our reading program, it not only organize the group reading some good books, make it fun. At the same time, it's also intellectual, inspirational discussion, sharing among the student led by our experienced teachers. The summer reading classes, we have classes for 3rd to 5th grade. We also have different classes into students from 7th to 10th grade with different subjects, okay? For the younger student, there will be more fun reading, but for 7th to the higher grade student, it will be more inspirational or philosophical, some popular school of thoughts kind of topic. So there are some really, really good books. If you're interested, I recommend them. I won't go to the details, but our registration link has all the detailed classes. If you get confused or have any questions, feel free to reach out to Blue Ivy teachers, okay? And we'll be happy to address your questions. With that, then one last thing I want to introduce is our, as usual, Professor N one-on-one college planning program, okay? We have 3 different programs. Mainly all the sessions are 1 hour long, one-on-one private session, the student or student parents with Professor N. We have 3 different levels. The first level is a mini program. Mini program is for the parents or student who wants to give it a try, but not sure they need help or what they, they want to get a taste of what help they're getting from those one-on-one. So they can sign up with a mini program. The second level we call it a non-senior program, but mainly it's a 14-session program. It intends to be 1 year-long program. And the first month would be a more frequent discovery phase where Professor N will work with the student, trying to understand the student, the background, their target, their strengths and weakness. And then the first couple of sessions will help Professor N get enough information about the student. So he will develop a recommendation for the student on different aspects like course selection, extracurriculum academic activities, or extracurriculum non-academic academic activities. It also will include summer activity planning, summer school planning, as well as constant check on the progress, adjust the development program as the student progress the years, different activity participation. So those are 14-session non-senior program. Some of the seniors also interested in a less intensive program. So they can, it's not limited to the senior student. Non-senior student can sign up for the non-senior program, but even some senior student, if they feel like they need just a once-a-month checkpoint, they can sign up that too, okay? And the senior program are 26 sessions. The way it works is typically senior will be ready to do their college application planning as well as their college application asset development. So 26 session, it's with a starting point in the summer. It intends to be a weekly session throughout the summer to the end of the year, because during this 5-6 months, there's a lot of asset topic selection, brainstorming, as well as asset development, as well as editing session, even including later interview preparation for some of the really good score, or they need an interview for admission, okay? So the senior program are 26 sessions, but that doesn't mean you have to do a weekly session. Sometimes you can skip a week if students are busy, but they may be lump 2-hour session into one when they have time. So we have a lot of flexibility built into those programs, but the bottom line is no matter you choose 5 session or 14 session or 26 session, each session a 1 hour private one-on-one time with Professor N. We can work with any topic or needs that the student or parents have, okay? Any questions on those programs, you can reach out to me. I will share with you my WeChat information, so you can reach out to me. We can discuss in detail. Next, I'm going to introduce Professor N. He is very familiar for a lot of our Blue Ivy students and parents, okay? Professor N is an Ivy League graduate. He graduated from UPenn. He's currently an Emory University professor. He has been an admission evaluator many, many years for UPenn and Emory. I think previously he's been involved in admission for some of the state schools like UGA and some other schools. He is also a very prestigious scholarship interviewer for Emory University. And, by involved in admission and scholarship, both application evaluator and interviewer, he has accumulated tons of valuable experience. That's why, when he worked with our student, in the next page, you'll see we really have tremendous result, okay? Not only that, he's also a published author, a writer, editor, and he is a speaker. And you can see from tonight's seminar, by his great speaking ability. Why that is so important is, when he work with students, a lot of students really wants to work with someone they really feel respect, and that will gauge a lot of following his advice. So as you can see from today's seminar, he really is a very respected advisor and also a mentor. Student will have a lot of trust and confidence in. Last thing I want to mention is he has been a career advisor for Emory University. And also, not only he's been involved in academic world, before he was also involved in industry, investment banking, and also he had been a former corporate recruiter. Why that is important is, personally, I believe if you are only involved in academic world, you never been in the outside world, you can give students a lot of advice that actually lead only on campus. But being a corporate recruiter, he really blends in a career development, longer term roadmap vision for students while he advising students in choosing their universities as well as career path. He actually bring a lot of broader perspective when he do college consulting with our students. So he truly is a great mentor. I think it's beyond college education. Okay, with that, I'm going to share a little bit, one more fact about our admission result this year. Then I'm going to hand it over to Professor N. Last year, we have tremendous result. Here is our 2023 admission result. For early admission, we have Harvard, Stanford, Yale, MIT, Columbia, Duke, Georgia Tech, Emory, as well as a number of other universities. For regular decision admission, we have Harvard, Columbia, Cornell, Brown, UC, Johns Hopkins, UCLA, Northeastern, Boston computer science major, UTwin, and there's a number of other schools that I do not have space to write it here. What I do want to mention is sometimes I got a question on, does Professor N work with students from California school system or Austin, UC Austin and Northern schools? I want to share with the parents, Professor N has been doing college admission mentoring for the last 10 years. And we actually last time went over the top 50 US colleges. Among all the top 50, he has sent students and very familiar with the colleges within the top 50. except for, I think it's 1 or 2, the bottom colleges of those top 50. So feel free to reach out. I'm sure if you are targeting the top 50 colleges, Professor Ann has a lot of experience and know a lot of inside information on those colleges' admission standard. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Ann. Steve, I will turn it over to you, and thanks for your time, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Chai, are you able to hear me okay? Is my sound coming through okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm going to switch to my shared screen because I have a hard copy.
You can switch to shared screen. But the one thing I want to mention to the parents, we have a Q&A time allocated at the end of the seminar. So if you have any questions, go to the chat page and type your question in the chat. At the end of the presentation, Professor Ann is going to go through those questions and trying to address them from the parents. Okay.
Okay, I'll make sure to do that. So thank you.
So I cannot see your screen. It's a black screen right now.
It's a black screen. Okay, let me do it this way then. Let me stop share for just a second. Are you still able to see it now?
Yes, I can see it now.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, so that was strange. Right. Well, thank you very much for having me, Chai. I know that, let's see, I think we were scheduled to go until 9:30. So if there are some questions and, I'm able to go a little bit over time, so that'll be fine. But I have, what I intend to be a very short presentation. I think, I want to give the opportunity for people to ask their individual questions. So the assumption is the seminar for today is really just for overall planning. And I'm going to follow what was in that flyer initially. And so one of the first points was common mistakes. And so what I've done is enumerate some of these. And so one of the common mistakes, and each one of these, of course, is somewhat ironic. So being strong in academics, that's great. You'll notice there's an ellipses after each one of these points. And so that's where the mistake, of course, falls in. The reason for me starting off by saying being strong in academics is a lot of times a student will focus on a single academic subject and neglect other areas. And it's good, there are a lot of arguments. It's good to specialize in some subjects. But what admissions committees generally look for is what we call T-shaped students. And so students will do everything pretty well across the board, but then have a specialty area. So being strong in academics, that's great, of course. But if you focus overly on just a single area and neglect others, it's a pretty common mistake. And I see a lot of applications get scored low because of that. So make sure you're T-shaped. Another common mistake I would say goes along with achieving in all of your activities, which of course is great. Okay, but the problem, the mistake that happens is there's a phrase in admissions where a lot of times we say the student who can do anything cannot do something. And so the emphasis here is on all of your activities. So the common mistake is, in 9th grade, you should experiment, okay? But in 10th and 11th grade, you should eventually be showing that you don't have so many of these all activities and you're starting to specialize a little bit more. Excelling as a student, of course, is usually a great thing. Okay, the reason why this ends up being a mistake for a lot of people, a lot of applicants, is they forget that colleges, we're not looking for lifelong professional students. We're looking for people who are going to be great students and then even greater human beings after they graduate. And so the common mistake is thinking that, if I'm just an ever greater student and the admissions committee runs out of superlatives to describe what kind of an academic I am, then of course I'm a sure thing. A lot of people point to somebody else and say, well, so-and-so got in to such and such college, and I've got higher grades, I've taken more difficult courses, my SATs and AP scores are higher, so then I must be a sure thing. Very, very common mistake, couldn't be further from the truth. Confidence and independence, always a great thing, right? But the common mistake that stems from this one is having a false sense of security, thinking that being exceptional in one area is going to eclipse weaknesses or gaps in other areas. And if there are questions to some of the specific weaknesses and gaps that I've seen result in lower scoring applications, I'm happy to address those later. Independence, it's a great thing, right? You should be your own initiative-taking, self-reliant adult. But being too much of one at the expense of not being very good in groups and teams, and whether you're leading or contributing, okay, that's something that every admissions committee looks for. Okay, in a way, I would admit it's a little bit unfair. It's paradoxical because in order to really do well in high school, you know, the average high school student is, you know, right, it's a B student, right? Because that's what average is. Okay, but so by definition, in order to be exceptional, you have to be a little bit of a lone ranger, right? So therein lies the paradox, because you have to also show that you can work well in groups. And I know how it feels. Nobody wants to work in a group where there's a free rider, or, you know, that one slacker who doesn't do anything but still reaps the benefits of the group's results. You know, you have to show that you know how to deal with that, both as a team member, but then also as a leader of that kind of team. And then working hard every day. How is that a common mistake? So again, this can result in low scoring applications, because a lot of us notice that, you know, people don't really have any sort of a medium or longer term plan when they're going through their high school careers. And so working hard every day means you have a very myopic, short-sighted, tunnel vision approach to your high school life. Think of it this way. You really have 3 years to show the admissions committee two main things, which I'll get to, in order for the admissions committee to make their decision. And you need to understand a little bit about how the admissions committee views those 3 years. And I'll talk a little bit about that in one of my next slides. But working hard every day, as great as that is, can be a very common mistake if it results in you losing sight of what the big picture is. And so in a nutshell, freshman year, experiment. Sophomore year, achieve. Junior year, lead. So that would be my suggestion for a long-term strategy to avoid the mistake that stems from this. Again, following along the topics in the flyer, one of the specific points was what really matters to admissions. I think it's very important to understand how admissions works. So again, for the sake of brevity, I'll describe admissions, and this generally pertains to the top 10 schools. And by top 10, I just euphemistically refer to them as the 8 Ivy League schools plus 2, MIT and Stanford. Okay, so really those 10 schools, the logic being, if you can get into one of those 10 schools, you can probably get into some of the other schools. Okay, so with that said, what really matters to admissions? There's a 3-step process that we look at, and this is, of course, generally speaking, because you know, all 10 of the schools, even all the Ivies, we vary a little bit now in our admissions processes. But the 3 steps are basically, first, it's algorithmic. A computer will generally filter out a lot of applications, because if you think about it, on average, the Ivies, we get about 65 at Penn. We got over 60,000 applications, and you know, it's impractical to think that a human being is going to pour over each application. So the first step is somewhat of a algorithmic filter. The second step, your application usually gets chopped up into pieces, and then it gets assigned to somebody like me, who's got to go over, sometimes it's been around 800 or 900 essays, maybe 2,000 Common App, 10 activity boxes, and so on. But anyway, your application gets chopped up into pieces and it gets assigned to different people, to armies of people who will then evaluate each section. So for example, your essays will get scored, your teacher recommendations will get scored, your activities, of course, your transcript will get scored in many different ways, which I can get to later if there are questions about that. After that second step, the third and final step, assuming the application makes it through that scoring phase, is committee. And again, somebody like me, and usually 2 others, will look at your application, and then we'll argue and debate, and then we'll vote. And the vote's very simple. You're either in or you're out. So if you're in, there are different types of acceptances, conditional acceptances, there's direct acceptance. A wait list is actually a type of acceptance, and so on. Okay, but in order for us to make that determination, that vote, we're really just looking at two questions. It's very simple. It's very difficult. The first question is, what kind of student is this applicant going to be when they're with us? And the second question, which is the much more difficult, and most people will acknowledge impossible question to answer, is what kind of person is this going to be after they leave us? And so that brings me to those two main questions of what really matters to admissions. We're trying to figure this out. Okay. So here's the good news. The first question, we usually don't spend a lot of time on. And the main reason for that is your application would not have made it to committee if we had a question of what kind of student you were going to be. And so again, the kind of student you're going to be is going to be driven by, you know, things that go on in the classroom, as you would expect. Okay. And so that's going to be each of these factors, which I know they're all listed in the flyer. And what I want to do is save some time if people have real specific questions. Okay, but I can address each one of these, at least in terms of what I've seen empirically for most applications and most students. Okay, so a lot of times people ask the question, well, how much does GPA matter? Does it matter a lot or a little? The answer, unfortunately, is both, right? So a lot of times a high GPA can mean, something in terms of academic competitiveness and acumen. Most of us are familiar with, I'd say around 200 or 300 of the top high schools. We're very familiar with their curricula. But then again, a low GPA doesn't necessarily doom your application. I'll give you a quick example of how admissions can evaluate an application from a holistic point of view. Suppose you have a low GPA. I'll give you an example. A common low GPA, a common reason for it. Suppose you have a low GPA. Your transcript reviewer is going to look for outliers, or are they going to look for whether or not every single class is low? Okay, and of course, it would have escaped the algorithmic filter. If there's an outlier, we'll look at that outlier. And a common outlier that I've seen empirically is AP biology. There are a lot of high schools that offer AP biology in 9th grade, and so there are a lot of grades in the transcript that are in the low 70s, and that's on a weighted basis too. Okay, does that doom the application? No. Many students have been admitted with low 70s, and of course, why? Because after the GPA, if it's low, we might look at then the standardized test. If you got a 70 in AP Bio, but you got a 5 on the AP exam, we don't really care about that 70 anymore. Okay, so if you go to an official campus visit, so for example, when I wear my little UPenn name tag and go visit some high schools, the official statement, of course, for all IB or for all schools really is, because we get the question, what's more important, a high GPA or a high standardized test? And of course, we all the campus visitor representatives, we all have to say the same cheesy response, which is, well, you need to have both, right? Well, in practical terms, right? So when you can't have both, which one matters? And you never get a straight official answer. So I'm going to give you the straight official answer. This matters more than this. The standardized test being high can eclipse or overshadow a low GPA. A high GPA cannot eclipse or overshadow a low standardized test. If you have questions about that interpretation, just ask in the Q&A. And let me go through these maybe a little bit more briefly. Course selection, very important, but we are aware that a lot of schools, for example, especially private and parochial schools, you're not allowed to even take an AP until you're a junior. Okay, so don't feel like it's a race to load up on how many APs you can take. Think of homeschoolers. They don't even take AP courses. Then again, how are they taking 12 AP exams and getting 5s on all of them? Okay, so again, if you have a question asked, dual enrollment, I think, is very misunderstood, and it's a lost opportunity for many students. A lot of students think because their high school does not acknowledge or grant credit for some particular college, and because the college that the high school does acknowledge for credit is already maxed out in enrollment, the high school student makes it's a really fatal mistake, thinking, well, then I guess I can't take dual enrollment, so I have to take some sort of lower level AP, like AP Econ or APES or CSARP or something like that, okay, or STAT, etc. As far as how the APs are even considered amongst most admissions committee evaluators, that's where course selection comes into play. Not all APs are created equally, okay? And so again, if there are questions about, well, what's MIT going to think of APES? Or what's Harvard going to think of APCSP? Okay, you know, just ask. But anyway, dual enrollment and independent study, commonly underestimated, commonly underutilized by a lot of students. It's a good way to really stand out as a student amongst others. Because if you think about it, if everybody's got, you know, 1540 and above on the SAT, everybody's got a near GPA, everything else on the application looks about the same, right? Because the teacher recommendation letters all have the same superlative adjectives. The activities all have captain, president, founder, etc. How is the admissions committee supposed to differentiate you? So this is a good opportunity to do that. Research is another good one. I'll briefly just address this. This is university level research. Okay, to the average high school student, research means Google. Okay, that is not research, folks. So being able to do university level research is also an excellent way to matter to admissions. Being a teaching assistant or some other sort of instructor. We see in the last, I'd say 7 or 8 years, we've seen a lot of tutoring, which is great for 9th graders. Okay, but once you're in 10th grade, you should either be teaching classes or running some sort of a camp or a program. And then by 11th grade, you should be either designing programs or being involved at more of a strategic level. I push my students to get involved with how schools will often work with other institutions, sometimes colleges, sometimes clubs, sometimes professional organizations. Okay, but again, that's expected more in the 11th grade. So remember, I mentioned earlier, 9th grade, experiment, try everything. 10th grade, achieve, and I think 11th grade, I said lead. Okay. Recommendations. Notice I didn't say teacher recommendations. They're not necessarily always teacher recommendations. Sometimes they're recommendations from the university professor who oversaw the research. Those are very good ways to matter to admissions, and so on. So if you have questions about that, you know, feel free to ask. And then, like I said, once you get to committee, we don't necessarily spend a lot of time on this because everyone already is an exceptional student. This is the difficult question to ask. This is answerable only based on what we see outside of the classroom in terms of what you do. And so to go through some of those things, clubs and competitions, I think that's self-evident. A lot of students say, well, the club doesn't exist at my school. My response to that is, well, then what a fantastic opportunity for you to start one, okay? The competitions, just because your high school doesn't compete in that or send a team, it doesn't mean that you can't compete in that as an independent. Usually all you need is one faculty who's willing to sponsor you and about $55, and then now you're in. Obviously, some of the more national level, higher level competitions you have to qualify for. But I think understanding high school teacher motivations is very important in terms of getting clubs started, entering competitions that your school doesn't even send teams to, doing research, and so on. Camps. There are 2 kinds of camps. Generally, pay for play is the slang that we use. Generally, the value of the camp is inversely proportional to the cost. Secondly, there's a myth that admissions committees might actually care about the institution that's running the camp. We don't. The further irony is we don't even care if you attend our camp. Okay, I mean, we will of course notice it, but what matters is what did you do at the camp? What is the resultant output? And my recommendation to most students, in order to really matter to admissions, is at the end of that camp, you ought to be able to point to something and say, I did that. So either this is a 50-page report that we're going to publish or submit to magazines. This is a 10-page deck that we presented at a conference. This is something that we're filing a patent on. This is something that we're, et cetera. You know, you need to be able to tangibly look at something and say what you accomplished. And usually that's going to be beyond the scope of the camp. Okay, the camp itself, again, I'll reemphasize, is not really important in and of itself. It's what you do at the camp. And if you consider it empirically, I've seen many applications get voted accept where they didn't go to any sort of camp where you had to spend any kind of money. A lot of these applicants who get accepted, they live in the middle of nowhere, especially some of the international students who get accepted. A lot of them are homeschooled. Okay, a lot of them can't afford a camp. A lot of them go to religious camps or YMCA or these sorts of camps. And again, frankly, we really don't care. What we care about is what did you do? In a lot of ways, going to something that has fewer resources is a better opportunity for you as a high school student to matter more. Internships and co-ops, again, these should be paid. There are 3 different ways that you can be paid as an intern. Don't think just because you don't get a paycheck, it's not paid. A co-op, if you don't understand what that is, then you're missing out on a good opportunity. You should probably ask in the Q&A. This is something that will really help distinguish you in terms of the second question, getting a real job. There are a lot of nuances to that, so I won't go into too much detail with that. But I literally have seen many applications favored over others because somebody spent a week working customer service at Walmart. And you'd be surprised at how much impact, especially in the essay and that we read in the interview report, anecdotes about when you were in 9th grade. These are all actual examples. When you were in 9th grade, you were a soccer referee and broke up a fight between 2 parents, 2 dads that were getting into a fight in a little league soccer game. Okay, and this was a 9th grade girl, by the way, and we wrote her essay about her breaking up that fight and talk about acting more adult than anybody else on the soccer field. Dealing with drunk customers at a restaurant, how to handle shoplifters in retail. Okay. How to handle when somebody blames you for something that's not even your fault. Say you work in food service, you're not the one who cooked the food, yet somebody's yelling at you for it. How do you handle that situation? Those are anecdotes that cannot be replicated in the classroom, most of us believe, in admissions. And most of us, especially we old folks like me, okay, we have these experiences. We're big believers